Hi everyone, welcome to
Mimosa Talks. So today we're going to talk about working on ourselves to develop healthy relationships, specifically romantic relationships. And when I think about working on myself to develop healthy romantic relationships, I think about growth, change, and self-love. So once we think about self-work as not only something that requires time and effort, we can visualize the life-changing rewards that our hard work comes with, and it would contribute to our journey.
I've never sat down, or maybe I have, but I haven't realized it, to think about self-work. But I think maybe in my early 20s, I've always been a very introspective person and very not quiet, not shy, but definitely very aware of my surroundings. So I would sit down with my family, and rather than participating and engaging, I would just watch interactions. And growing up, I saw everyone working on themselves, but it was superficial. It was to lose weight or to tighten their skin or to be hairless, you know? So I feel like that's what I kind of was raised with, the notion of that's what self-work is. But then I also saw my family just being the majority of women raising children alone, women working multiple jobs, women who were depressed but had to work 2 jobs to continue to support a family. So I feel like I saw all of that. And then in the same side, I saw them getting into bad relationships. I remember when I was younger, I saw my uncle who was using drugs get a rock, and he was gonna hit my aunt with it. And I remember being a child and being totally freaked out. And I just knew that, you know, that's not the type of love I wanted to be in. And I also knew that I was choosing partners as an early age who kind of showed me that they were angry, or they showed me that they were really avoidant. So I think that in order to do self-work, I just started to sit alone. I started to go hiking. I started to journal, reflect, talk to insightful people. And I basically just tried to heal the generations of my family that were in pain without ever letting them know that that's what I was trying to do. So I feel like now as an adult, when I see myself getting into the same pattern, I can be really self-critical and really angry, because I'm like, no, we're not doing that. We're trying to fix what was broken in your family or what was hurting.
Obviously, my parents were not good parents. From what I'm hearing, their parents were not good parents. When I had my first child, who's now 13, and then I have an 11-year-old daughter, I was so scared. I remember my mom, I was like, what am I going to do? And it was actually after I had him that I realized, actually, I'm free. I am free to make it up as I go, and I don't have to follow any of these patterns because I don't remember them, which is fantastic. And my dad was not a dad. So I try to make it up. I've made mistakes. I talk about it with my kids a lot. And it's one of those things where I'm glad it's like it ends with me, like those patterns. That's what I want. I want them to be secure, happy children, and I hope I can provide that, you know.
And you need to think about, do I want to follow those patterns that my parents taught me? Or do I want to do it better, not only for me, but for the people around me, friends, family, my partner, my significant other? I remember, and also like you just said, Sammy, self-work comes with struggles. And we can see it in our moms working double shifts. The first time I felt that I was doing self-work was when I decided to move out. And I was doing something for myself. My mom was not happy. She told me that if I leave, to forget about her. She didn't talk to me for a year. But I still went with my decision. And it hurt me so much. At that moment, I felt so sad. I just didn't know what to do, because I used to call her. I used to try to look for her. She didn't want to see me. So what I decided, and that was self-work, that I didn't want to be like her. I wanted to be better than her. So I decided to keep trying. If she didn't want to be a good mom, I wanted to be the best daughter that I can. So I kept trying. And after a year, she said, yes, okay, let's have a talk. And then she realized that I was already another person, that I grew up, and she even told me that she admires me. She told me that I did something that she always wanted to do, but she didn't know how to. And sometimes you just need to go for it and believe in what you want.
Yeah, and you were able to teach your mother something that she felt that she wanted, and she just didn't know how to accomplish it. And so the fact that her daughter, I feel like maybe you can relate, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but Mexican mothers, it's almost like, you know, you have to listen to them. They know better, or at least my mom knows better. And so to try to mother your mother, it's going to be, you know, scary, because they're going to look at you with those eyes. But she was even able to come to you and tell you, like, hey, like, I'm very proud of you. You made me very proud because you were true to yourself, even if it meant turning your back for a while on us, because you didn't. You worked on yourself.
I've taught my kids to question when I say stuff. Now, I've always tell them to, like, if I'm saying something, you do it first and then you question. It's fine if you don't understand, but you have to do it first just in case it's an emergency. But sometimes now, like, you know, they're like, well, that doesn't make sense. Why are we doing this? And I have to think, because, like, the easy path is be like, yeah, I'm the parent, listen to me, whatever, do what I say. But there's been a few times where I was like, you know what? You're actually right. I'm sorry. And yeah, my bad. And thanks for letting me know. And you're amazing. That's great.
I love your evolution. We're evolving as human beings, and it's okay to understand that as humans, as parents, as friends, we make mistakes. And the important thing is, how are we going to improve that?
Yeah, I think it's like a huge thing for a parent to apologize and to say sorry, not to go like the passive aggressive route, or like the route of like, I'm gonna, without saying sorry, non-verbally apologize. I don't think that I ever received an apology from my mom. I remember she got drunk once, and I think at that point I felt a lot of resentment because I didn't live with her for 3 years, and then I moved back in with her. And she called me a sarcastic bitch, and she was basically like trying to give me away. She was like, who wants this sarcastic bitch? I don't want her. And I remember thinking that like that really hurt my feelings, but I have like a poker face. So I was able to kind of like keep it together. And the thing that I did when my mom got like that, I would just check out, emotionally just check out, just for my own self-preservation. But I remember never hearing an apology from her. And I think that like just being able to say, I'm so sorry for what I said or for what I did or anything like that, it really does help heal the heart.
If my son was here, I think maybe that could make it. When somebody asked him, like, how is your mom when she's mad at you? And I remember I was like, she's like, don't do this. I'm sorry. I don't mean to say it that way, but I'm really mad at you. But like, I love you. It's all good. So they get the message, but sometimes I have to like lay down the law a little more, because it's a hard balance. And I talk about that with them too. It's like, I know I tell you can discuss stuff and everything, but I am older, I have lived more, and I'm here to prepare you for life so that you're independent and everything, but you're also a good person.
Your kids might hate you for X or Y or Z. And it's okay, because it comes with the age, it comes with the stages, right? But then as you get older, you realize that your parents are humans. It's okay to forgive. It's okay to have conversations and open the conversations. It's okay to go back to your mom and tell your mom, hey mom, I didn't like how you said that. So it's okay that your parents are not perfect, because I started forgiving my mom when I realized she was a better version of her mom. I'm very grateful that my mom changed patterns. Maybe not how I want it. Then that is my responsibility. Make that better changes so I can be the better version of my mom, and even more. So because I also had, I was exposed to other things. I can blame my mom for everything she did. It will be ungrateful in my eyes.
Yeah. I'm curious because Lola, you're the only one with children, and I'm 26 and Fabi, you're 35, and I personally don't plan on having children, but it does make me really sad sometimes to think about like how much maybe me and my sisters are growing compared to like maybe where my mom was, and Fabi, like you were saying, like our grandmas. So I see that we're progressing and that we're growing and that we're breaking cycles, but I'm just curious to know if it ever makes you sad. Of the thought of like not having children, to possibly pass on even more wisdom too.
I think I'm grateful enough to have really good people around me. I have a very strong circle of friends, and family, that I don't think that you need a little human to pass knowledge. I think that in your daily life, you need to make it, it's our responsibility as human to demonstrate how you can improve not only the world, but just being a better person and making good decisions, and people seeing the example you give in your daily life, you can create a big impact.
I agree. And also, I never planned to have children. It was, I planned it when we had them, but I never thought I would be in the situation of planning to have kids. Like, I was married and was like, oh yeah, maybe it, like, suddenly it was like, oh yeah, this seems real. So it wasn't like when I was in my 20s, like, oh, I'm going to have a kid at all.
How old were you?
When I had Max, I think they probably know better than I do, 30, 32, something like that. Like,
and then prior to having kids, did you think, like, maybe one day I'll want to have kids? Or
I'm not a kids person.
Yeah. My partner now, we kind of, like, stopped talking for a little bit in the beginning, but he also came to my house. And he was, like, looking for me and wanting to talk to me. For me, that's, like, a big no-no, because I've had multiple guys come to my house and try to talk to me. And for me, it's kind of like, I can give you my number, I can give you my Instagram, I can give you all that stuff. But, like, for you to come to my house, I feel like that you're now crossing a line, because I've specifically told you not to come.
But have you thought about what you have done to
Yes.
make that people
Yes.
not get to that point? Because sometimes
I was
we
very
can
avoidant.
change little things,
Yeah.
so they don't do that. So
Yeah.
they don't get there. So
Yeah.
what have you changed?
So I think for me, like, in that most recent time,
Uh-huh.
I was really avoidant, and I was quick to be like, oh, I don't like these things. I actually am starting to like you too much, but I don't like these things about your personality, and I'm done. I'm just done. I don't have time for it. I don't have space for it. I don't want it. I'm done. And so for him, he was just kind of like, it came out of left field. So he was like, what? Like, we were just hanging out, and then all of a sudden, like, you don't want to, like, talk to me or be with me or anything. So, like, what's going on? Like, I have to go see you. I need to go see what's going on with you. And I'm like, no, I'm done. Like, do not come to my house. But I definitely...
And what was the difference?
Like, I have to, like, understand when I'm going to reach that point of avoiding everything.
And what do you do? Like, whenever you know that you're about to reach that point, what do you do that you can tell us what to do whenever you're about to reach that point? What can we change?
I asked for a pause. I just asked for, like, I need this to stop, like, for a second. It doesn't mean that it's over. It just means that I need a moment to be alone, because I find so much, like, peace in my solitude. So I feel like when I am being hounded with almost, like, I need to love you, I need to be on you, like, kind of, it makes me feel, there's been moments where I literally feel suffocated. Like, I feel like someone is on top of me and they're crushing me.
I heard that you give reassurance, right? So
Yes.
that's awesome. That's a big piece, giving reassurance to your partner that I love you,
But,
I just
like,
need some space.
You need to back off for
This is
5
not
minutes.
over. And we can talk about this in 2 hours or in 5 hours. Or I call you. Be calm. It's okay. It will happen.
Yeah.
Not right now.
I still understand. Like, I used to do the same two things, actually. I wouldn't state my boundaries. So, like, you overextend yourself, and then you kind of resent the other person, even though really
It's you.
you're the one who didn't say, okay, I need that space. And it comes from self-awareness, too. Being able to pinpoint when you need it, because a lot of the times when you don't, you reach that level and you just want to break everything, and you're just like, I'm done, this is over, and you don't even understand yourself where it's coming from. And that's where I think journaling helps and everything, but it's also just be really clear with yourself and what you're feeling. And sometimes those feelings could be ugly, or you don't like that you're feeling that way, but that's fine. But also I had the same thing where I could not stand having somebody go to sleep mad at me. And that's what it was. It's the fear of abandonment. So he probably has a little bit of that, because even like coming to somebody's house when they told you not to, that comes from like a high emotion. And it comes from an emotion where you think the other person is leaving you. And that is literally the worst scenario for
someone who fears being abandoned.
Exactly.
You just mentioned right now that self-awareness comes with age, right? In this research, Colen and Pereira, in their 2019 research titled Psychological Morbidity, Social Intimacy, Physical Symptomatology, and Lifestyle in Adult Children of Divorced Parents, where they recruited 75 students with divorced parents during their adolescence and childhood from a Portuguese university. And they found that the older the participants were, the better they perceive the relationship of their divorced parents. Sometimes the relationships we are in is a reflection of our past relationships, of the relationship of our divorced parents, and the relationships we have grown with. It comes with what we think is love. And what love is what we see first in our parents, and is a reflection sometimes of the relationship we have our parents, what we saw that it was love in the relationship of our family members. And sometimes we need to break those patterns, right?
But it's even worse than that, because even when you know that as a child, what you were shown to be love is toxic, even with that awareness, you still will go with the familiar. And you might not notice it until you're like, oh, I'm here again. This is the same thing. I thought this was different, and here I am again. So there is something to be said. It's great to be self-aware, but there's also something that needs to be acknowledged in childhood. Like I found when I did my therapy, I knew that my childhood was awful, and I knew that the grown-ups around me completely left me behind and no one took care of me. But I never let the anger out. I never said, you know what? Yeah, this was really messed up and this sucked. And I never really acknowledged it, because to me it was putting myself in a victim role. But acknowledging it and just like crying and actually feeling a little sorry for my girl self for like a week changed. Like once I was done, I was like, yeah, you know, it did suck. It's good.
Okay, yeah. So Bianca, she was always the kind of rambunctious child, and I was more of the calmer one before my dad died. But then when my dad died, I was like 2. So, I mean, you hear people talking about like terrible 2s, but I was completely belligerent. I was just the worst 2-year-old toddler. I was just always crying or throwing tantrums. I felt like a lot of rage, and I think that carried on until my childhood. And I just always felt a lot of anger and resentment towards my mom, because she always dealt with her depression, and you know, rightfully so. She lost the love of her life. He was like 32. Yeah, she had to raise 3 daughters on her own, but I just felt like I expressed and experienced way too much anger. And so in my adult life, it's having to soften myself and having to soften my kind of perception of people, rather than being so angry, just kind of taking my mom outside of the role of my mother and seeing her as a person who lost someone.
So coming back to self-work, what steps did you follow to realize that you had to work that to improve your future relationships?
After a few failed relationships, and realizing that for some reason I did always go for the person that I felt was safe, but it was never the case. So I don't know that I followed my heart, but it was almost like calculated. And there's a point in your life where you just like look back and you're like, okay, I would really like to experience a healthy, happy relationship. And I believe it can be a thing. But it's also what we talked about, the social media showing you what a healthy, because that's all I had, right? That's all I had was television. Pretty much like I was brought up on, you know, movies and TVs, and they like don't depict exactly the healthiest type of relationship. So a lot of it was self-awareness that I was actually going through a pattern, and that even though if I look back, all my boyfriends are very different, there's a pattern. Doing the work of letting myself be vulnerable, because that's the big one.
You're right. Understanding that we're humans, we feel. Subrigen and researchers in their 2011 article named Self and Partner Objectification in Romantic Relationships, Associations with Media, Consumption, and Relationship Satisfaction, they reported that men have higher levels of partner objectification. And what is objectification? Is when we see our partner as sexually attracted or physically attracted, and we make it as they're an object. They don't have feelings, emotions, and what I want from that person is what they need to give me. And media shows us so much about that.
I'm 45. So the TV shows were all Americans, but I think they were there a little bit later. So I grew up on like Hulk, Love Boat, Chips. What was the other? Little House on the Prairie was a big tearjerker. But then there was the animation was all Japanese animation, which is very different. Like it's all very manga and all that. Completely different cultural aspects. Most of the things that I saw for romantic relationships from movies, old movies. My dad was really into old Hollywood and TV shows. But I think what you said is so right, like about we see somebody and we meet somebody and we make up this image of who they are. Like we literally, like we all do that with everyone, right? But in a romantic relationship, we have to be really open to being open ourselves and also to who that other person is, because we're all so unique and so complicated. And really, if we took the time to do that, to be like, okay, I like what I'm seeing and I like how I feel when I'm with you, but I really want to know all of it. I want to know the good, the bad, and the ugly, because that's who you are and that's what I want to show you too. I think if we took the time to do that, we could have much more successful romantic relationships.
Yeah, I think also it's interesting because you meet someone, you like certain things about them, and then you're almost like, I need more, I'm hooked, I want to learn more. But even in meeting someone, two people are going to change according to who they're meeting. Also in that, it's like you're going to influence me and I'm going to influence you, and in that influence we're going to be different. So I think you also have to be adaptable and willing to see your partner change, because what you think you see in the beginning is not how it's always going to remain.
And reality is so different than media, right? The roles, I'm 35, so the roles of men and women, they were painted so differently than what they really are. So the woman is that submissive, sweet, loving, nurturing person, and the man is the strong, breadwinner, ambitious. So how they paint us in media, at least when I was younger, is completely different. And then you feel like you are in the wrong family. What is wrong with me? What is wrong with my family? What's going on? Right? What do you guys think?
Yeah, the media has the man, the breadwinner. That's not what I experienced at all. My mom died when she was like really young herself, but she was the ambitious moneymaker type person doing arts. It was like arts, and like she did so much up to the time when she died. The view of what a family was completely different than what I lived, because I didn't really have a traditional type of family. But then you realize as you grow, there are no traditional families.
And then we can realize when we notice that we don't have a traditional family, that our parents are humans. And then we realize that the people that we're around doesn't have to be perfect. We don't have to be perfect. And it's okay not to be perfect, because this is a life of lessons, and we control how we want to take that journey, right? The rest of our lives.
Sammy, what you were saying, like the traditional family, and then you were also talking about your mom. You talked about how you were angry about her being depressed, and how do you feel now that you know she's a human? As you've grown older, do you forgive her, and do you feel like that's...
During COVID, I got into therapy, and because I was going to move to Spain, and
I heard that.
Yeah, and then I didn't, because COVID happened, so I had to really like evaluate what the hell I was doing with my time, and I decided to go back to school and go to therapy. And then my therapist asked me about, or I think during that time I was just listening to a lot of podcasts, and I was just kind of like, I was not in a relationship, and I hadn't been in a relationship for 2 years, but I got out of a 4-year relationship that it did not fulfill me. And so I figured like, okay, well, I'll use this time to work on myself. No one really told me to do it. I kind of just figured like, I'm curious to know what a healthy relationship looks like. I want to be in that eventually. So why don't I just do the work now on myself? That way, when I get into a relationship or I meet someone that I really like, then I'll kind of be ahead of the game. So that was kind of just my intention going into it. And I just found myself really, find myself really interested in everything having to do with relationships. And just because I never grew up with a father. So I was like, I don't know how to be in a relationship. Let me learn.
Yeah, I mean, I know bad relationships. I had all the examples of like the stuff you're not supposed to do, but I was in a relationship. I was living with somebody. It was really toxic. It was horrible. And I ended it finally after a few ends, which I don't know how healthy that is, but I did therapy. And after that, I went on a dating app as an explorer. So I was like, okay, I have all these new skills and this new self-awareness, and I want to like experience like what it is. And I went on a few dates, 6, 7 maybe.
20.
And it was they were all really nice people, and they were really good experiences. But what was interesting is, for once, I wasn't trying to be the chosen one, or and I wasn't going through a checklist either. I was really just going with the flow and kind of like, okay, I have again these new skills, and can I meet? And literally the day I was gonna get off of it, because it is exhausting. I'm like going out and you don't know the person and you have to make conversation. And I was gonna get off, and then this person came on and was like, oh, I like his story. Like, he was, Australian, whatever. And we started talking. I was like, I don't really, I was about to get off the app. Do you want to just meet as people? Like, we don't have to call it a date, because I just think it's cool. Let's go. And like, I literally I didn't even walk my dog that day. So that story. But it was interesting to see, because he had gone, a lot of people went through therapy during COVID. And people that do the work, I think, are more willing to communicate, to be really, they're more self-aware. So you're very honest about who you are. And you realize that when you share those kind of things with somebody, and they're sharing those things with you, it brings like a whole other level in the relationship that is so like amazing. It's so freeing. You feel like you're really in it. I feel like before maybe it was more surface, not because there wasn't any love, but because there's always that self-preservation that everybody has. And I realize in a healthy relationship, you can't have that. You have to go all in. Right, Sammy?
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you were in a place where you weren't necessarily deciding mentally that you were ready to date someone, but you were approaching the situation with curiosity. I do tend to take things really seriously, and I'm someone who, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to try to do it to the best of my ability. And that goes even with dating. If I decide in my mind that I'm not ready, then I'm just closing myself off to that. But even just approaching it, like you said, with just kind of curiosity and thinking like, well, I have all these skills that I've recently developed. Obviously, if you have a skill and you don't use it, you lose it. So you can only practice so much by yourself. You have to practice with someone else. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a deeply committed thing about like being together or marrying each other. It can literally just be going on a date and communicating even in the style of dating, because I think attachment styles, they do show us that sometimes it might be harder to date someone and to commit. There was a study done by Alan Goodboy and San Bolkan. It was called Attachment and the Use of Negative Relational Maintenance Behaviors in Romantic Relationships, and the study was done in 2011. They were talking about maintenance behaviors in relationships, such as prosocial and negative relationship kind of styles of managing conflict. They talked about attachment and how it is driven by innate evolutionary forces. If a child does not receive security, then they start to create negative working models around attachment and security, and that often carries on into our relationship.
I want to be secure.
I want to be secure too. I think it's frustrating when you're in a relationship and you're doing the stuff like, what you feel you should be doing to kind of resolve some of these attachment insecurities, and then maybe your partner is just like a little reluctant to doing it. I feel like for me that's been something that's been a challenge.
I think it's part of what makes a relationship healthy, because everyone has their hang-ups, their things, their all these things we talk about. We all have done one of them bad things with everyone. That like no one's perfect. But if you're willing to meet your partner in the middle, if you're willing to do the work, if you're willing to say, hey, I messed up, or you messed up, but not in an accusatory, but more like, hey, I think you messed up and we need to talk about this because I don't want this to happen again. It's all about communication, but it has to be really open and vulnerable.
Whenever you want your partner to listen to whatever you need to communicate, you need to make sure that you talk in a way that he's going to understand, especially if you already have been with your partner for a while, you know what he doesn't like, what they like, then it's okay to deliver whatever you have to deliver, however he likes it and however he's going to listen.
Yeah, there was a study done by Davila and other researchers in 2017. The title was called Romantic Competence, Healthy Relationship Functioning and Well-Being in Emerging Adults. And they were discussing relationship dysfunction, such as lack of security, poor attachment, and internalizing symptoms of conflict within the relationship, and how damaging relationship dysfunction could be. However, they brought up that many people don't seek help until they're deep into the relationship. It doesn't help to get access to help when you're already that deep into it, but rather it's better to approach the situation and learn prior. So I think, for me personally, I believe that we should start teaching children at an early age. We teach children about economics, we teach them about history, we teach them about their bodies, but we don't really teach them how to love people and how to have relationships and not avoid conflict, but manage conflict. Because like you were saying, Fabi, you have to compromise and you have to be able to meet your partner's needs, but also your partner has to know what their needs are. Because if they don't state their needs, if they don't even know their needs, you cannot meet someone else's needs.
For a long time, you feel like you are putting in the work and then your partner is not doing anything, and that's how you feel. In those moments, it's important to communicate, but also if this person doesn't want to change, is not meeting to your expectations, is not growing with you, you guys are not meeting your life goals, it's okay to let go. Sometimes it's important to understand that someone you met in your past might not grow with you, and some relationships they would just last for a little bit, and it's okay. You learned something.
I think I've always needs and people are so complex and it can be so challenging to wrap your head around it. But I've always liked the analogy of just a medicine cabinet, and you know what's in your medicine cabinet. You know what products you have in there. You know what works on your skin. You know what works on your hair. And you have those staples. You have the non-negotiables, the ones that are always going to be there. And then you have the ones that, maybe you try, you don't like them out, and maybe they'll sit there for a while, but maybe you just toss them later on. And I think that is kind of your needs. You individually, what works for you. And so those, when your partner can't meet a need that you have, maybe you just leave it in there and, you're like, okay, well, he can't meet, or they can't meet this need. We don't need it. We'll toss it. But then maybe they can't meet a need of yours that's like your favorite hair conditioner. And that is like the one that you cannot get rid of. And so you have to communicate it because you're like, this is the most important need that I have, AKA the most important hair product for me. I cannot get rid of it. And I feel like it's been easier for me to understand needs in that way.
That is also why some people decide to be in non-monogamous relationships. And the interesting thing is that's exactly what they talk about. A lot of them talk about the fact that they can't expect one person to meet all their needs. And so like you see polyamorous relationship where there's like 3 people, sometimes more, and they do that kind of arrangements where some needs are met by one person, some needs are met by another person. Now, I've never been in those kind of relationships, but in this article from Jess Matzik, Unique and Shared Relationship Benefits of Consensually Non-Monogamous and Monogamous Relationships, a Review and ... which was published in 2017. They talk about all the aspects of it, but what was interesting in that article on what we're talking about is they're talking about the attachment styles, and they looked at some research that was done, and they found one research that said that a lot of highly avoidant individuals endorsed non-monogamous relationship. Why would you think that? Because of course they don't have to commit to anything. They don't have to commit emotionally. But that is not what a non-monogamous relationship is. And when they looked at another research, they actually realized that a lot of the people that are in successful non-monogamous relationship are actually secure.
I think that also has to do, they decide to commit that to themselves instead to anybody else. So committed to on yourself, doing the self-work, knowing that the most important person in your life is yourself and is the only person you're going to grow up with forever. So putting in the work, putting in the hours, at the end will be completely worth it because you're going to just, everything you do would be for yourself.
A lot of the article actually talks about that, and they talk about the fact that every person they've interviewed always brings up the self-growth, the fact that they are allowed in those relationships to be completely themselves and grow as a person, and that is what they like. And they also noticed that a lot of the people that were in those kinds of relationships are usually highly educated and highly intelligent, and their goal is to focus on growth. And in that aspect, it seems to work for them. So I thought that was really interesting. It's very healthy relationship. I'm very happy. And he does that kind of stuff where he's like, do you want something? I'm like, well, I can go get it, but I'm going in the kitchen. I'm like, oh, he's right. And he's insistent on helping me set up for my next art fair. And it's really strange. And he's like, stop it. And like, I was complaining about it to my 13-year-old. I was like, I was like, how dare he? He's following me on my Instagram, and he was like, oh yeah, how dare he be a good boyfriend.
I feel like I started working when I was 14, and that was because like I didn't want to ask my mom for money because she was always tight on cash. And so I just like started working and just making money, and until then I never asked my mom for money. But I have a partner who's very giving, and he's extremely giving to the point where it's like I'm okay with like receiving little gifts here and there, maybe receiving lunch or dinner, but he's like, oh, let me buy you that TV you wanted, let me buy you that phone you wanted, let me buy you those shoes, those tights. And so for me, I'm just kind of like, it took me a while to be like, I always said no, no, no. And now I'm kind of like leaning into the yeses.
When you're saying no, you're saying it because you're relating to yourself. But remember that it's probably a pleasure for him to do that. And that's something, but I totally understand. Like I have the same type of problem where I relate to what you were saying you say no, but I also have lived so many times to what you were saying, Fabi, which is I've said no, 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 and then you're like, oh, but they don't do that for me anymore. They don't ask anymore because I said I didn't care about it, but really I did. What did I say I didn't care about? What was it about this? It made me feel like maybe I was needy or vulnerable because I needed them to ask, but I didn't want to admit it. So it's all these like very complicated layers. Relationships so complicated.
I love to be, I don't want to say I love to be left alone, but I do just love like peace and quiet and solitude. And so sometimes it's like I want to be around someone but not have to engage in that constant like chitter chatter. Sometimes I just want to be fully present in a moment but just alongside someone.
I remember when we started dating, he was sculpting because he does special effects, and he was like, I really like this, like you're reading and I'm sculpting and we don't have to talk, but you're here. And I realized, oh, he's right, we're both doing our thing. And that is so important because the media always shows like the relationship where you kind of have to be always talking to each other and know how exhausting. And like also I wouldn't like, you need to be able to be alone, and you need to be able to be calm and do your thing within a couple's setting. I think there's a compromise, and but when I text my boyfriend, we know I don't have to answer right away, and he doesn't have to, and I don't spend. Before I would have spun. Why is he not answering? Oh, the relationship is over. He's over. Like, this is not what's happening. I'm just like, okay, he's doing his thing, and similarly, I can be doing my thing, and he knows it's fine. There's no, and that's the secure part. That's where I'm working on getting a secure attachment style, right?
Yeah, I think it's like getting hung up on like maybe, oh, he's not replying or they're not replying, or I think you can't always be expecting someone to comfort you and console you. It is that inner talk that you have to develop. You have to kind of talk yourself down from like no, well, they're busy. Oh, maybe they didn't see their phone. Oh, and it is kind of even communicating with just yourself. Because sometimes you can communicate to a partner, but sometimes it's not about the partner. Sometimes it's really about communicating with yourself and being like, okay, well, why am I getting so worked about this?
And it's important to realize that all relationships are different. If the one in media or the one that your friend has or the one that your parents had have different communication styles or different needs or wants, it's okay. It's okay that you don't want to follow whatever they're following. That's why it's important to communicate right. If you have the thought of like, I don't like how this is working, but it's too much to mention, I prefer to just analyze it and say it later, but it comes out again, then you need to talk about it. Obviously, if you feel that it's not a big deal, then it's okay to just analyze it, digest it, and then talk about it in a calm way, in a safe space, whenever you know that is going to be delivered however that person needs to receive it. But it is important to say it. If it's important for you, it should be important to say it. It doesn't matter if you think, oh, but it shouldn't be a big deal. If it's a big deal for you, it is a big deal. Just say it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's like getting hung up on like maybe, oh, he's not replying or they're not replying or, oh, I think you can't always be expecting someone to comfort you and console you. It is that inner talk that you have to develop. You have to kind of talk yourself down from like, no, well, they're busy. Oh, maybe they didn't see their phone. Oh, and it is kind of even communicating with just yourself. Because sometimes you can communicate to a partner, but sometimes it's not about the partner. Sometimes it's really about communicating with yourself and being like, okay, well, why am I getting so worked about this?
Yeah, definitely. It's all about in the delivery.